My name is Juan Carlos Espinosa. I'm the Associate Dean of the Honors College at Florida International University. Today we've gathered to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the arrival of Roald Admundsen and his team to the South Pole. Roald Admundsen was the first man to reach the South Pole. He was part of a group of polar explorers, an age of heroes, who in the early 1900s tried to get to the South Pole, to explore Antarctica, and also to get to the North Pole. Roald Admundsen was a Norwegian explorer. He spent a lot of his youth on ships exploring the Arctic waters, Greenland. So Amundsen was part of a number of expeditions to try to get to the South Pole and to explore Antarctica. He was part of a Belgian expedition, and eventually he had his own expedition. And interestingly enough, on his way to the South Pole, he used the ship by another very important Arctic explorer, Fridtjof Nansen, and the ship was called the Fram. A lot of his crew thought that he was heading north. So when the ship got to Madeira, he told his crew that no, we're actually going to go to Antarctica and we're going to go to the South Pole. He also sent a telegram to his main competitor, Scott. Scott was British, and he was another one of those great polar explorers. So Amundsen, I wouldn't say he played a trick, but Amundsen used the element of surprise to get a little further ahead. Amundsen made it to the Antarctic coast off the Ross Island, the Ross Island shelf, and he landed at a place called Whales Bay. He tried to get to the South Pole in a different way than others had tried. For example, a lot of the other expeditions had used horses and had used big fur jackets. Well, what Amundsen decided to do is he was going to go native. So he brought sled dogs, and he wore the kinds of clothing, the leather clothing that Eskimos wear, that the Inuit wear in the north. And he was able to make it to the South Pole. Scott was also racing toward the South Pole. And he got there not too long after Amundsen had started returning to the coast. When he got there, Scott, heartbroken, we're sure he was heartbroken, saw the tent and saw the Norwegian flag and a note. Well, Scott and his men never made it back. They died on the return trip. Nevertheless, when you go to the South Pole, and I've been privileged to be able to go there, you go to the Amundsen-Scott station, because both men made it to the pole, but only one of them made it back. And that was Roald Admundsen, who later on ended up going to the North Pole. He was the first man to go to both the South Pole and the North Pole. And in the late 20s, disappeared. An Italian blimp was trying to get to the North Pole, and on their return, something happened, and he was part of a rescue mission and was never heard from again. But forever, Roald Admundsen will be known as the first man who made it to the South Pole, an intrepid polar explorer. He was among the last of the great heroes of the exploration of the last continent that humans were ever set foot on, and that was Antarctica. And today we mark 100 years.